Hi, I'm Kayla Magruder, and I'm here with Mrs. Partridge. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you first would be, what inspired you to become a music teacher at OBU?
I was actually born into a singing family. I remember my father singing around the house a lot, and he led the congregational singing in our little country church, and my mother and he often did duets together. So singing was a part of my upbringing very, very early on. I was very fortunate to have some excellent church music ministers in my life as I was growing up, and they were the ones who actually encouraged me and got me involved in singing more and saw something in me that I didn't even realize at the time, and encouraged me to consider at least moving into music as a career. At that time, and until I was a senior in high school, I had made plans to be a nurse.
Oh, wow.
So I kept that consideration going and even took courses in high school with that in mind. But I soon realized that wasn't God's plan for me. And so I entered Ouachita Baptist University as a music major.
Oh, wow.
Which was a great surprise to my parents, I'm sure. But music has been a great source of release for my emotional expression, and I find it a great solace. So I've never regretted having made that choice. It's a wonderful opportunity to allow me to make a difference in somebody else's life, either through performing or through teaching. So I have found it great, fulfilling experience.
Yeah. Would you say that, which one would you prefer, performing or singing music or teaching music?
Yes, well, performing is something that all musicians, or most musicians anyway, certainly do. We all have a particular applied area that we're trained in, and I love performing, but from the very beginning, teaching was my first love. So I've always considered myself a teacher who happens to perform.
Yeah.
But there's nothing really more rewarding for a teacher than to guide a student and then realize and share with them in that moment when they get it. And when they get it, it's a moment of rejoicing, and we build on that get it moment. But that's very rewarding. That's something you don't get from performing. You get other benefits certainly from performing, but the teaching certainly has ramifications that are beyond you, that extend beyond you. You leave a legacy that moves through the student to someone else. So it's kind of like leaving something in your will for someone.
To remember you by.
Yeah, right. Developing a skill like singing or playing an instrument is a long process, and it takes some courage for students to take the time necessary to really build the skill. There are many highs and lows in the process. So you also have to be an encourager as well as a guide through those highs and lows, and keep reminding your student that there are going to be those valleys, and there are going to be those long plateaus where it seems like nothing is changing and never ever will, and then all of a sudden you get a get it moment and you have a mountaintop experience.
Oh, wow.
And those mountaintop experiences are worth all of the long plateaus that you have been through, because it's usually then that you build on that mountaintop experience, that get it moment, and maybe you'll go through another plateau for a while, but then eventually there's another wonderful experience, and you reap the reward, at
Oh,
least,
wow.
in those situations. So as a teacher, you get to share in those moments with the student.
That's amazing.
Teaching one-on-one, which is what I did a lot as a voice teacher, allows you also an opportunity to become personally involved with that student. And that relationship is something that continues after graduation. It doesn't just end there. They are usually grateful enough that they come back and keep in touch, and it's a building relationship even beyond graduation. But it's, as I said a few moments ago, a great feeling to know that your legacy lives on through them, and you watch their careers develop and their families grow up, and they are imparting the knowledge that you have given them and the additional knowledge they have learned in the process of teaching or performing or whatever they're doing on to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I've also always felt like I learned as much from my students as maybe they learned from me, or more. I know they were not aware of it at the time, but they presented many challenges for me that I had to dig a little deeper for. I had to go and find out, how am I going to deal with this particular problem or this particular vocal aspect, or how am I going to guide this student in a way that will be ongoing and not just momentary.
Yeah.
So even though they were not aware of it, I learned a great deal through the teaching process and through their challenges that they presented to me. So it was great. It's been a great experience.
Do you think that in order to be in music, do you have to be, I don't know, good to be in music? Or can anyone be in music and be
Well,
better?
I think you have to have some basic talent, some basic understanding of music to really make it a career. Now, anyone can enjoy music. That's a given.
Yeah.
And anyone can study music. But to make it a career, you really have to have a basic talent that can be built and that you're willing to build. You're not just satisfied with where you are when you come in. And you also have to be willing to explore other avenues. There are many areas in music that you need a good background in, and it's really, really better if you have some background in those areas like theory or piano when you come in as a freshman. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
But it's certainly much easier for you to progress and progress as quickly as you need to at the college level.
Yeah, wow.
To have a little background. So, but anyone can study music. That's
Anyone can.
anyone can. Yeah.
Out of all the years teaching music, what is your favorite memory? Do you have a favorite memory or something that you still remember to this day that kind of just you bring back?
Oh, that's hard. There are too many. I don't have a one favorite.
Maybe several or a
memory.
couple.
That's a tough one. I'd have to think about that a while. As far as teaching goes, of course, it was always very rewarding to see my vocal students do well at contests, but that's icing on the cake. That's not really where the biggest rewards are, but those are also very, very high moments that you remember when you have a student that goes to contest. And we are in a very competitive region here in Oklahoma, which covers Oklahoma and Texas. And this particular area of the country produces a lot of professional musicians. So when we go to contest, we're up against some really tough competition. And to have a student do well enough to even place is an outstanding accomplishment.
Whoa,
But I did have one student actually win a division, which was really exciting.
that's
So,
amazing.
yeah.
What happens after that? They win. Like, do they
Well,
become professionals?
No. It is just a good thing to have on the resume, especially when you're going out there auditioning or interviewing for jobs and so forth. And it's a major stepping stone for vocal development. Once you've accomplished something like that, you can feel pretty good about where you've been, where you're going, etc.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Did you consider performing in your career?
I never did. As I said, my heart was never there.
It's
I
just-
had teachers who probably wished that I had, but and indicated to me that that's where I probably should go in graduate school. But I chose a different track. I really felt performing was not for me. I've never been one to put myself out there, and I think
Yeah.
to be a performer, you really have to have that need. Most good performers need to perform. Life is not fulfilled without it. But I never felt that way.
Your
For
need
me,
was
personally.
teaching.
Mine was teaching.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's a great.
But I love to perform. I don't want to put that down. I
Yeah.
do enjoy it very much. And I feel like that God has given me a gift and I have a responsibility to use it. So I do. But teaching is really what I love the most.
I'm sure you impacted a lot of lives through your love of teaching by
Well,
the
I
students.
would hope so. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah,
you did.
I would hope so.
How has teaching music been beneficial to your life now? Like, how has it impacted your life right now through all the years you've taught?
Well, of course, now that I'm retired, I'm relying pretty much on my own innate experience, emotional experience with music. I find that music is both uplifting and soothing and something that I find great joy in. I'm still participating in a couple of choirs so that I do have an outlet to sing.
That's great.
So it's, and it is something that I like to encourage other people to be exposed to. So I love to attend concerts and so forth here at OBU.
Me too,
I'm still
yeah.
fortunate enough to be here where I can do that. And OBU has some wonderful programs. So we're
does.
very fortunate in this particular community to have a lot of wonderful artistic expressions.
I agree. Did you intentionally want to work at a Christian college? Like, what was your motivation to come to be a teacher here specifically?
Once I finished graduate school, I taught public school music for a year, which was where my degrees were centered initially. But I soon realized that public school music was not necessarily where I needed to be or where I wanted to be. I determined that I could remain in it if that's where the Lord wanted me. But I really began to pray about it seriously in that first year of teaching and asking for God's guidance, because I really felt like immediately that I needed to move on into the college level, that that's where my desires were. Well, I hadn't been praying about it but for a few weeks. And Dr. Bill Horton, who had been a professor of mine at Ouachita Baptist University and had come here to teach,
Wow.
called me and said, "We have an opening. Are you interested?"
Oh, that's great.
And I said, "You won't believe this, but I have been seriously praying about moving into the college level. Yes, I'm interested. I am interested." So I came for an interview with Dean Warren Angel. And I don't know why, with only 1 year's teaching experience right out of grad school, And based on Bill Horton's recommendation, he hired me.
I guess God's hand was in that moment.
Absolutely. It couldn't have been anything else.
Yeah, like.
So within 6 years, they decided they wanted me to stay and granted me tenure, which is now called senior faculty status.
Oh my.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. Oh my
But I've
goodness.
never wanted to leave.
That's
so,
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. What has music taught you over the years? Has music taught you anything?
Oh, yeah. I find that music is a powerful tool. It has the capability to do many, many things. It's an outlet or a pathway, I would say, to the heart, to the soul, to the mind. We find that it even transcends language barriers, physical, mental barriers, cultural barriers. You don't have to know the language to communicate with music.
Wow, yeah.
We find that even with people who are suffering from Down syndrome or even autism seem to respond to music where they don't respond to anything else, or in a way that they don't or can't respond to anything else. An example of that, and I don't know if you saw this on America's Got Talent just recently, the young man who won for the year was an autistic young man who was also blind, and he played the piano and sang, and you have never heard anything come from inside his soul any more than from that young man. And people in America recognized that and chose him to win the entire competition. It was amazing to watch him. And when he wasn't singing, you would look at him and think, how in the world did he even get here? When he would walk out on the stage, you would never guess that he had that inside him. But music gave him an outlet to express himself, and he loves music. He loves music.
Oh, wow.
Because it's really his saving.
I agree.
So I've learned that music has a great deal of power. It's a natural outlet for those who want to share joy, or a natural outlet to release anxiety. It also draws people together in a common experience many times, in a worship service, for example. Studies have even proven that students who train in music or have some music exposure when they're young, particularly, do much better in their other courses in school than those who don't. So it has some very significant benefits and effects on the brain. So I found that music is a very powerful tool, and one that we should probably be sure that we incorporate in all of our lives in one way or another.
Yeah.
It's something that everyone can enjoy on some level. It's not reserved just for those with talent, as we would like to say. Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to add to the interview? Would you like to that maybe perhaps people don't know about, like in regards to music? Like,
I don't know that there is. One of the favorite things that I liked about working at OBU was the relationships with the faculty and with the students. as I said earlier, those last for a very, very long time. And following retirement, I can guarantee you it lasts. And after graduation for the students. But there's a very warm, caring family experience here at OBU.
There is, yeah.
And I have been blessed by that in so many, many ways. That loving and supportive environment is one thing that helped me so much as a very young, inexperienced teacher.
Yeah.
When I came in, there were faculty members, fine arts faculty members particularly, that just took me under their wing and guided me and wanted me to succeed and helped me in that area. Faculty members like Catherine Timberlake and Mary Kay Parrish, Dawn Clark, Jim and Betty Woodward, Jim Brown, Dan Hodges, Jack Pearson, Retta Mayfield Hudson, Richard Farley, Ron Lewis, Bill and Peggy Horton, of course, and Dean Warren Angel, who had the foresight, I guess, to hire me in the first place.
That's so amazing.
But I've always felt so blessed to have had the opportunity to live out my career in a place like this with such warm, supportive surroundings and with the wonderful students that we have here. I'm continually reminded of that as I stay in communication with some of them. But it's been a great experience, and I have been very, very blessed to have been here.
Oh, wow. Has there been any challenges when you were teaching? Like, that really kind of maybe shook your faith a little bit or shook your questioning of whether you wanted to teach music still?
No, I've never actually questioned teaching or wanting to teach or teaching here for that matter, because I always felt like that was God's will and I knew I was where I was supposed to be. So I never questioned that at all. Challenges came primarily in trying to find the right path for each student. They're also individual.
Yeah.
And when you're teaching one-on-one and you're developing an individual skill, you have to be sensitive to that. This person is not like the one I just had 30 minutes ago. They're at a different level. Their skill is different. Their voice type is different. And so there were times when I was teaching a voice type. I remember particularly a young bass. Basses are very rare, by the way, and so you don't ever have very many of them in your career. Now, I can think of maybe 2 or 3 that I did teach. But the first one I taught, I had never taught a true bass before. And so I was challenged quite a bit. I had to do some digging and some learning very, very fast in trying to help him. And he did very well. I was very pleased with what he was able to do. And he seemed to enjoy what he was doing, which was even better. You know, sometimes they resist and they don't want to do what you need them to do, but he was very willing and very cooperative, and so we did okay together. It turned out all right. He taught me a lot. But it was a challenge.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was a challenge.
When you taught, did you, with women especially, did you like sing a part and then they would sing a part, or was it more textbook, or was it like them?
Oh no, it's always performing.
Always for the teaching.
Yeah. Now, my learning many times comes from textbook learning, but then you have to apply that, and that's where you really learn. But they were in the studio singing. They would have to prepare on the outside in the practice room the literature you had assigned, and would hopefully come in with it the notes and the words and the rhythm learned, so you could actually begin to work with the voice. But yeah, it was singing.
Oh, wow.
They were doing most of the singing. Sometimes I would demonstrate, and that is one way to get the response you want. But most of the time, it was a matter of trying to convey to them verbally what I felt they needed to do, and then let them experiment with that until they found what they needed to do what they were doing.
And you graded by ear? Like you just listened and said, good job?
Yes. Yes. It's very subjective. That's true. Yeah, the grading is very subjective. I know where we are headed, and I know where they are right now, and I grade on the progress and how much progress they're making toward the eventual goal. Yeah.
Is it hard when you have students who are just entering music and they think that they're already like great musicians or singers, and they just want to, I don't know, they just have their view of their own voice?
Right, and that is a hurdle you have to get over, but it doesn't take them very long, I don't think, to realize that where they need to go is further than where they have gone. But you do have occasional students coming in thinking that they are already there and they just want to sing.
Yeah.
But it's a hurdle, but you do get over it. Or if they don't, then they probably don't need to be a music major and find another path, and that's okay.
Yeah. How has your family been? What has you been teaching music? Like, how did that impact your family? Like, did music help your overall family? Like your husband and your kids, did that benefit them too?
Yes, my husband was a singer. He was a tenor. He loved to sing. It was one of his favorite things, and he would sing in the church choir. But we finally got to the point he would sing a duet with me. He resisted that for a very long time, but he certainly didn't want to do anything solo. But he finally began to have more interest in his own vocal development, and he asked me a few things, and I gave him a few tips, and then he studied for a little while with J.C. Ferrand and did some vocal training there, and so he became a little more interested once we married. As far as affecting my family, I just come from a very musical family, on my dad's side particularly. Everybody sings, and when we have had family reunions, usually there's a big sing-along of some kind. So it's just been a part of our heritage and growing up. Yeah.
So your kids love it?
Well, I don't have any children of my own, and when I married, my husband's children were already away from home, so I didn't really have children to influence.
Okay. Wow. Well, I think this covers the interview.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for your time and helping me to do this.